This is Dennis Williams from Money Talk Viewpoint Post. We are just thrilled to have you join us today. And I wanted to start off right off the bat by introducing to you our special guest, which is Mary Elaine Petrucci. And she is just phenomenal as far as what her skill sets are. And just to give you a little bit of background, she's a healthcare specialist with over 20 years in healthcare and pharmaceutical sales and marketing experience with neuro rehabilitation, working both in homes, home health companies, hospitals, and also worked as a healthcare provider working with children and adults in schools, home care, nursing homes, and memory care settings. She comes to us has a master's in business administration in healthcare management from Boston University. And she recently completed her studies under the auspices of the American Board of Hypnotherapy and NLP in mindset and performance training and coaching. And I'm just being able to spend some time getting to get to know her prior to this session today. It really became clear to me that she's just has a passion for being an advocate for the elderly, as well as for families in general. And she's been able to really summarize for me one of the biggest challenges that she has found in this whole thing of aging and the sandwich generation. It's around establishing healthy boundaries, enabling people to have positive relationships while still being able to provide the care and support that both the family and the actual patient actually needs. And so we kind of want to start from there this morning, welcome Mary Elaine Petrucci. Mary, go ahead.
Hi, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me on Money Talk Viewpoint. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. You're right. I do like to advocate for the caregivers in the sandwich generation and for seniors who are receiving their care from their loved ones. So boundaries are a big concern and for that generation, and it's a good place for us to start.
So from that perspective, when we talk about a boundary, what do you mean by that? Just for clarity.
Right.
I mean, what happens when you don't have boundaries? What goes on?
That's a really great question. Boundaries are really for us to protect our personal and mental space. So it's like having a fence between our neighbors. And it helps us involve the physical and emotional limits that we think is considered appropriate behavior between people. And boundaries really include our values, expectations, principles, or limits that you establish to keep yourself feeling safe physically, emotionally, and mentally. And those healthy boundaries permit you as a caregiver to be the person who you are.
So give us some examples of just so that our listeners are able to kind of connect, and if any of them are involved with taking care of an elderly. Like, for example, I'm actually, by the way, in Hawaii on the island of Kauai. So by the way, as we chat today, if you happen to hear roosters in the background, that's the reason why. Kauai has lots of wild roosters, and so you can just kind of smile as we proceed. But I'm here with my 92-year-old mother-in-law. So certainly from the perspective of boundaries, I think I have an idea, but can you give us some idea of some of the real life problems that people face when boundaries aren't there?
That's a great question, Dennis. So let me give you some examples. A caregiver can feel really resentful and exhausted because the person that they're caring for is demanding so much of them. And that person, the caregiver, thinks that they have to do everything that their loved one wants them to do when they want it done. And when you're not putting up a boundary and saying, no, I hear what you're saying. I can do X, Y, and Z for you at this time. Then you are setting up a boundary, because you're telling the person, I value myself and I value you. However, I have to take care of myself first and set that boundary so that I can better help my loved one with whatever their wish is at that particular time. So that's one way. Some people feel resentful because the person that they're caring for is really resentful, and makes the caregiver feel really small, diminished, because they haven't set a boundary, and letting their loved one know that they have to stop that particular way of interacting with them, because the caregiver has to say that I can work with you. However, I can't work with you if you're going to, be insulting or demeaning everything that I do for you. I hope those examples help.
So you're almost really saying, to put it another way, to provide quality care for your family member,
Mm-hmm.
it has to start first with quality self-care.
Oh, most exactly. Definitely. You have to set like those boundaries with everyone around you, everyone that you care for, whether it's a family member, a friend, a colleague. You really have to set those boundaries, and you have to let each of those different people know what you value about yourself to establish those boundaries. So, for example, Brene Brown says, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love yourselves, even when you're disappointing others, which is fantastic, because you really need to, by setting those boundaries, you are going to be more effective and more productive in whatever you do, like at home with the family that you're possibly raising, being more effective and productive at work. And you're going to be more productive for caring for your loved one, because they know what you will do and how you would provide that assistance to them. And it's a win-win for both people, because now you're not going to be stressed, overwhelmed, and exhausted and burned out. It just.
Well, so, I mean, what you're saying just seems so reasonable and logical, but obviously for your business in which you're serving as an advocate, you're also saying that people really struggle creating boundaries. And so kind of what causes them, what's the cause of the struggle? And I'm assuming here that, which you can address, is you're coaching them to learn how to set boundaries. Is that kind of what you do? Or are you telling them that they need to put it, and then you're done?
That's a great question. So first of all, yes, I can coach people, caregivers in the sandwich generation, to understand the importance of boundaries and how they should set them with each individual that they're really close to. yes, I can do that. I can do other things to help them reduce their stress and overwhelm and burnout. Before we get to that, I like to address your first question, which is why people don't set boundaries. And it's all centered around fear of angering other people, disappointing them, being looked at as being difficult or selfish, that you're being mean or that you're ruining a relationship. And none of that is really true. By setting boundaries, you are letting people know that they have to treat you in a specific way in order for you to give back what you need, the other person needs. So if you're caring for someone, I know it may sound nonsensical or contradictory, but if a person has dementia and they're having a behavior problem, it has nothing to do with that person giving care. It's having that caregiver think about, okay, that person is having a behavior problem. What can I do to better serve that person, to reduce their stress and agitation, so that I can give them what they need? That's one scenario. Or if somebody's being really abusive and about everything you do and saying that you can't do this, you don't do this right, you don't do that right, I want it now, I want it this way. Well, you need to set a boundary and say, look, I want to help, but this is what I can and will do for you. I can help you if you're going to be really abusive and tell me what I do or don't do. I'll tell you what I can do for you at this particular moment. Is that efficient enough for you? So you're doing some negotiation, so it's a win-win situation for both sides. But the minute you start setting those boundaries, people, after 2 or 3 times, they're going to get the message that they have to respect your boundaries so that they can get to have you do something for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I guess the challenge that people have, I would think, if they haven't done it on their own already, is some sense of them thinking that they're not being a good person. Is that a safe assumption to make?
Yes. Caregiving is a very challenging role. And I've done it and I understand what caregivers go through. Yes. What I'm suggesting is I need to help caregivers change their strategies and their limiting beliefs and negative emotions so they can be more effective in serving their loved one. I mean, we're all doing most of, our conscious mind is running our life like 95 to 98% of the time. And we're playing old tapes in our head over and over again. And it's not serving us now. Those are tapes that we incorporated from birth to 7. So I'm suggesting that by looking at your own life and the minute you change your life, it will make an impact on others.
So this process of setting boundaries, how long does it usually take? Is there or is there anything that's normal about the learning process? I mean, everybody's just totally different. It's random.
I think everybody is different. Every situation is different. It depends on the person giving care, and it depends on your loved one, and it depends on your relationship that you've had before you've been in that caregiving role. And then it also depends on how willing the person giving care wants to change themselves first so that they can help their loved one. So it really, there's no set time, Dennis. I think it's all depends on the two people involved in the situation and their willingness to see that the situation that they're in right now isn't working for themselves or the person that they're caring for. And once they come to that realization, they can start making the changes within themselves first in order to make it have an impact on someone else.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're just scratching the surface here. And I think we want to be able to continue this conversation as relates to just kind of being able to help bring additional clarity and steps that people can take. But before we go any further, I think it's important if any of our listeners want to get a hold of you to further up conversations kind of one-on-one, how do they do that?
They can email me at Petrucci, that's PETRUCCI2002
Okay.
And I'll be more than willing to listen to receive those requests, and I would be more than willing to provide support in any way I can.
Do you have a website also?
Yes, we do. It's caregiver Lifeline community.com.
Okay.
So people can, it's a membership site, so they can join on a monthly or yearly basis, which
Great.
provides them with a lot of resources that caregivers need. It also has the speakers that interviews that we've had last December and in April and this past November. And if people find that they need other resources, I'm more than willing to add those to the membership site. It's really a safe environment for caregivers to talk with other caregivers, and it's also a way for them to talk with other experts and myself in their caregiving journey.
That's great. And it certainly as relates, of course, kind of that we haven't touched on, which is something that's near and dear to my heart, is of course just the impact that this has on the finances of a family.
Yes.
And the whole idea of bringing boundaries also involves fiscal as well, so that you don't find yourself being drained. And of course, with what I do with my software application called finance app called CashMap, it's enabling people to see the impact long-term of small changes that they make, which I would say that would be a part of creating boundaries so that they could see the benefits of establishing boundaries on their financial health. And, so, on that note, listeners who are also especially pained by wanting to or having to pay interest to the bank, and also to learn how to keep your money working for you all the time rather than having it sitting passive, you can visit my website at www.cashmapapp.com. Visit my YouTube channel at CashMap Consulting, and my email address is dennis@cashmapconsulting.com. So it would be, so by all means, reach out to either one of us. We will be continuing this dialogue to go into these additional areas, Mary, that you've pointed out to us. And so we can kind of just keep digging further to be able to just kind of learn, and hopefully some listeners will give them some ideas in which you'll be able to assist them to improve the quality of their life for both them as well as their loved one.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Boundaries is a good place to start. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to share this conversation with your listeners.
Well, this will be just the first time. We will do this again. thank you so much for the time. We want to again thank our listeners to have joined us today, and look forward to kind of continuing the dialogue. And from Money Talk Viewpoint,